Okay. Hello, everyone. So welcome to our first Tech Talk of 2023. This is Changing Careers with Anna Miller. And this Tech Talk is hosted by the Collab Lab, which is a nonprofit organization completely volunteer driven. So while we don't teach people coding skills, we do help early career developers learn collaboration skills. So what we do is we would break up early career developers in small groups, like groups of 4. They will then work together on a project, and they will be guided by professional engineers. So they will experience meetings with professional engineers. They will talk about their code. They will answer questions. They will solve problems. They will create PRs. They will merge PRs. They'll resolve any PR conflicts. And what the feedback we've received is that this is a really valuable skill that people don't necessarily learn in boot camps or if they're learning to code on their own. So I hope that you were able to participate in the Collab Lab, and if you still haven't, I encourage you to apply for our next cohort. But our talk today is with Anna Miller, so I'm going to hand this off to Anna. And I'll stop sharing my screen, Anna, in case you have any materials that you want to present.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, I'm just going to talk for a bit, and then we'll get into some other things. So thank you for hosting this Collab Lab. So my name is Anna, and I've worked in tech for 10 plus years, and my background is in product management. And I've worked with everyone from CEOs, software engineers, designers, UX. So I've been exposed to a lot of different roles within tech, and that's essentially driven my interest in kind of helping people figure out, well, how do I transition into a new career in tech? And as of last year, I started offering coaching, and now I do career coaching for career changers. So today we're going to speak about building a professional brand. And when I talk about branding or a professional brand, it's all about how you show up. So it's about the words you use, the way you talk about your projects, how you highlight your work from the past, whether it's your professional experience, work experiences, or projects that you've built. Anything that you've accomplished and done, that would be, in my mind, considered experience that you want to highlight. But what happens is when people are changing careers, it's really hard to switch identities. It's obviously hard to switch identities on like a personal level, but it also is difficult in like a professional sense. And what that means is, let's say, let's take one of the intros here. So Kevin's background is in theater, music, and education. So there's a specific frame of reference that Kevin was used to in terms of engaging with others and speaking with others and interacting with them, and also how he presented himself in terms of his professional self. But now transitioning into web development, it's a whole other kind of world in terms of the keywords you use, the way you talk about your work, being more technical in the way you describe certain things, for example. Overall, there are a lot of skills that still transfer. These are called transferable skills. We won't dwell on them too long today, but in terms of presenting yourself, you're still gonna use communication skills, right? You're still gonna talk about yourself in like one or other perspective. But the focus from, someone that is in theater and music to now a software engineer, that kind of creates this gap in, well, how do I talk about myself now? And one of the hardest places to talk about is about yourself, because what people want to know is, who are you in a professional sense? And the persona that you've developed in the last 5, 10, 15, 20 years might not work for you anymore, especially in a job search. So this talk is really about closing that gap and creating a new professional persona, and that's kind of your brand. that matches what you're looking for in a new job. And there's a couple of elements that we keep in mind when creating this new persona, and your target role is one of them. So whatever you're transitioning into, that's kind of your target role. Sometimes there could be more than one target roles. For example, a software engineer could also have adjacent roles they're looking for, like tech support, or maybe like a developer advocate. So there can definitely be adjacent roles, but overall, you all have like a new role that you're moving into, and that's the target role. So this new professional brand is basically structured around a new professional persona that includes different keywords, different ways of describing what you've done, and just more aligned with where you want to go versus what you've done already. So I want to pause there and ask if there's any questions on what I've shared so far. You can send those in the chat or speak up here. Okay, well, if any questions come up, please feel free to send it over and we'll address that later in this talk. So first, let's talk about what it means to create a new career identity. So as I said, branding is all about the image you present of yourself in this new professional identity. And that comes out in a couple of different ways. That comes out in your resume, your LinkedIn, and your interview conversations. So basically, every company that you're applying for has a job that they're looking to fill, and they have a specific person in mind. And when we talk about branding or personas, it's about kind of becoming that person. Even if you have the skills or you're working on those skills, it's about showing up as that person that the company is looking to fill the role for. And again, this can come up in conversations such as coffee chats or connection calls, so more informally, or more formally in the interview, the resume and the LinkedIn. So why I start mentioning resume and LinkedIn, obviously we know this is all important, but there are a lot of ways that you can use these platforms to really highlight your professional brand. So the resume and LinkedIn are two tools. They're not the only tools, but they're this kind of starting points where you set up your professional brand. I'm going to share my screen and kind of give you a small example of what I'm talking about. So here's one screen, and this is a lady I've actually worked with in the past, and she has since transitioned to product management. However, she did not really use LinkedIn as much in her career transition, or at least not outwardly. And therefore, her profile is exactly like it was a few years ago when she was working in media planning at Sony. So as you see, even though she completely transitioned and has been working in product management for the last year and a half, I have no indication of this. However, she is now going on a new job hunt. And if she doesn't really update her profile to represent herself as a product manager with all the new experiences, there's no way anyone can figure that out. And this is not like the only place, and it's not like 100% required, but the thing is, if you don't do kind of use your LinkedIn to really hone in on what kind of companies, what kind of work you're going for, you're missing out on people finding you. And also when you're sending connections to people that you don't know, it's very confusing to them. So if you didn't update your LinkedIn already with, projects that you've worked on, a title here that kind of points to your target role, basically create a profile that is all around the learnings that you've done and the roles that you're looking for. It's going to be very confusing for people, and you might not have as many connections. And overall, it's better to have more connections than less, of course, and to give people a very quick glimpse of what you're going for. So in terms of what is a good example is this kind of profile. This is another person I'm working with. He is a nurse. He's actively working as a nurse until he finds a role in development. and he's been self-taught for 3 years and has a number of projects. The thing is, LinkedIn is for a very specific purpose for every single individual. And if you are on the job search, your purpose is to attract people that are looking for individuals like you. So that could be based on a domain like health tech or ed tech. That could be based on the product size or the size of the company. And of course, the target role as well. So when reworking his profile, we made sure that the title is very, very clear that he wants front end and it's focused on React. And then there's a link to portfolio. So it's really easy for someone to right away understand like what's the target role and where is he in a job search? He's still looking. Great. Then you could definitely do things like feature certain things like your projects or your posts. That's up to you. But what's most important is that your about and your experiences are really branded for the kinds of companies you want to work at. So I totally get it. You may be applying to like a ton of different companies, you know, some you know about and some you don't. However, you could brand yourself to the best of your knowledge where you want to be going. And that has to do with maybe understanding the domain that you want to work in. As I said, maybe ed tech, health tech, marketing, other things, or startups or large companies. There's a wealth of differences in different companies. And you can, the more targeted you are, the better you connect with someone who is looking for a person like you. So here is his about. And as you could see, he starts with the fact that he's a front-end developer with a background in nursing. You don't ever want to start with like, I'm a nurse and a developer, because that's kind of confusing. What you want to do is clarify immediately the new professional identity that you're going for, your target role. So this is going to be his first professional kind of job. So he doesn't have as much like real work experience as a developer to kind of ignore that he's a nurse. So using what's in your background and to play up your strengths and connect those with transferable skills, that's really important. So that's why this kind of about is one way to do that. You talk a bit about your journey, about your background, but you connect that to transferable skills. So as you see here, it's all about attention to detail and communication, right? And a lot of job descriptions talk about this because that's pretty much almost any job, but different job descriptions will focus on different aspects of communication or different levels of attention to detail. And then a bit about your coding journey and what you did. For example, if you did a boot camp or did courses, kind of list them out, talk about that. It's your time to really shine, but in a relevant way for the jobs you're applying for. So once you do that, you move on to your experience. So this is an example of a targeted and relevant profile, which is branded for a developer. And this person is self-taught, so it could be under your bootcamp or some other title. But most important, you're showcasing your projects front and center. So if you don't have like freelance work or contract work or like, you know, work with clients, like direct professional experience, what you want to highlight are the skills that you've already gained and learned through the last like 6-8 months or 2 years of learning, however, wherever you are on that path. And what that does is let someone know that you are focused on this. This is really what you're going for, and that you already have some learning that you want to show with them. And these are the projects. You basically want to show all these things that you've already accomplished through your LinkedIn profile. And same thing with the resume. So use the LinkedIn profile for, you know, for the branding part so that you show off what you've accomplished. So I'm going to stop sharing. Any questions around LinkedIn? Anything anyone's encountered that's been helpful or not helpful so far?
Hey, Anna, not a question from me, but I just wanted to say the profile that you just shared looked really good. and the about section read almost like an essay, a shorter
Yeah,
form, but almost
yeah,
like an essay.
exactly.
And I felt like that was a really good way to introduce yourself to recruiters. And then as you
Yes.
scroll down through the experiences section, even the projects that were listed, languages like coding languages and tools that were used in those projects were tagged in each with links
Mhm.
and everything. So I thought like that was a really good way to present your project on LinkedIn.
Yeah, thank you. Exactly. That's my goal working with everyone. And anytime I share this kind of information, for everyone to really figure out how to shine in this new professional space that they're entering. Even if you feel like, oh, I haven't accomplished enough, or I don't have enough experience, or whatever shows up, that's essentially blocking you from figuring out how to shine. So yes, and Sophia mentioned it felt like a cover letter. Exactly. So what I've realized is, and many people know this too, like the resume format, basic resume format is very old. It's antiquated. It doesn't work. It doesn't show anything to anyone, and it's hard to read. So what I developed for myself a couple of years ago is what I essentially share now is talking about yourself in a very personal way, but also professional. So as you saw, we're not going to talk about like all our hobbies, but we could potentially mention it if it's relevant, or we can add them at the bottom. But in most important, when you're figuring out how do I talk about my past career, that's where you blend the transferable skills like communication, creating documentation, conflict resolution. You blend that in with like talking about the new role, because that's essentially available and important for any role that you're going into. And you do that through reading job descriptions. So we're not going to go down that rabbit hole right now. But if you want to get really good at like, oh, how do I talk about myself? Read a job description and add your personality on top of that. So cool. So basically, here's a formula that you can start using. Oh, yes, Jacob,
I see that
question?
Jacob just raised his hand.
Yes.
Mhm.
I was just wondering, so do you have a specific preference on using open to work versus not putting it on the profile? Do you
I
recommend?
think it doesn't hurt. I think what serves people is networking, and open to work just allows you to kind of be more clear in what you're looking for, that you're actually open. I don't think it has much influence in terms of like, will help you get a job faster or not. I don't know. I've never seen that study. Will it deter anyone from contacting you? Again, I don't know. But will it create more clarity? Absolutely.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. It's probably depending on the company too and how they feel in the recruiters. So
I mean, recruiters are just looking for anyone that could be remotely, qualified.
right.
So your qualification, like so many people don't have open to work because they're legitimately not looking and still get messages. So I don't think it really counts that much, like whether you're gonna get messages or not, but your profile description, projects, how you talk about yourself, like if you have an easily accessible resume and portfolio, that will help. But in terms of discoverability, I don't know. I think you have to pay like a lot of money to search by open to work, honestly, on LinkedIn. But what recruiters definitely search for is key terms. And that's exactly the key terms that you want to integrate into your profile, from your title to the about to talking about your projects, because they are searching for those terms. And if you come up, they're likely to include you in the list of, I don't know, hundreds of people that they message. Recruiters are, as everyone, doing the best they can to find relevant people, and they're going to message like lots and lots of people. I don't know, could be thousands, because the response rates will be very low, right, if they're doing that approach. Again, just focus on like what you want to target, and then it's likely that those people will resonate once they see your profile, even if you're doing the outbound, like to them, like reaching out to them.
Right. Okay. So it's important just to have the focus on the specific industry and kind of company that I'm looking for, and looking
If
at
you
job.
have that knowledge. Yeah. Yeah. So for example, as a product manager, you could be different kinds of product managers. You could be a payments product manager, implementation, onboarding. You could work with platform. You could do marketplaces. You could only work with companies that are scaling. You could only work with small startups. You could only work at Google. Like you could do technical product management. Like there's a whole lot of variety that if you don't like really clarify what kind of work you want to be doing. So like in engineering, like software engineer is not specific enough unless, you know, you have so much experience, like any job you apply to, they'll be like, yes, I want to talk to you. No, the market's kind of weird now with being super saturated. So that still might not work. But if you're as targeted as you can get for the level of interest that you can determine, like if you don't know if you want to do ed tech or marketing tech, that's fine. Might not mention the domain. But if you have a background in marketing, like why not highlight that? So it's about like finding how to play to your strengths and connecting that back to the role.
Awesome. That makes sense. It's very helpful to think about this.
Yeah.
I also
Absolutely.
have a friend and she wants to just put her camera on, but she said that she's unable to with the settings.
Yeah, we've had problems in the past with Zoom bombers and stuff. So I can unlock that for just a second. And then, is that Angeline?
Yeah.
Okay. So you should be able to do that now. Oh, yeah. Okay, good. I'm
Oh,
gonna lock
you,
it back
Andrew.
in though, because,
Hello.
you know.
Thanks, Jacob.
nice. So awesome. Thank you for your questions. Definitely let me know if you have any other questions that come up. I just want to get through a couple more things and then open the floor to kind of seeing where people are at in their job search and seeing how we can move things forward. Right. So in terms of the branding, what the formula that I recommend is job title plus doing something specific, plus company size or factor. So here's a few examples of what that sounds like. I'll put that in the chat. And this is good for, you know, a tagline in your resume or putting that up in your LinkedIn. That could be the starting point of your about. It depends on, you know, where your strengths are, if you've had professional one-on-one work experience in that target role or not, and if you have a defined interest in a specific domain. So you might want to spend some time digging into, well, what did I actually do? Who did I interact with? Who did I sell to? What did I create? And then read some job descriptions and be like, oh, that sounds like documentation, or that sounds like, you know, clearly I've worked in education, so why don't I like highlight the fact that I'm an educator? Or someone like a software engineer with a background in medicine can target health tech companies. And again, like this is not to say like don't apply to other kinds of companies. What this says is if you do encounter a health tech company, that will raise your relevance and the ability for the recruiter to be like, this makes sense. And raise the chances of you getting like a screening call, essentially. So yeah, so you could basically start with mentioning the number of years you've had or just the general background in a certain industry, but domain expertise is something that you can combine with your target role to create essentially your brand. So from a personal example, my job as a product manager spanned both health tech and construction and payments. So I could basically pivot into any of those. And I could say, you know, product manager with 4 years experience working with startups, excited to build like the new payments technology for construction. So that really resonates with companies that are actually doing this. And you can play around with that and optimize as it goes. But that helps you create an actual target. What I mean by a target is like when you're applying to like every single role that's out there, that sounds okay. You may not really know like what's resonating or what's working. In your networking, you probably will encounter opportunities across the board based on just who you know and what they recommend you. So it may not match what you're targeting, and that's okay. But if you do have a specific background or an expertise, why not use it? And just kind of start there, like start somewhere, essentially. Right. So the domain expertise is pretty important. Right. So here's basically, I'll share this article with you in a minute. This is basically taking from the article. All of this around branding is to make sure that you have the best chances possible to resonate with the recruiter, the hiring manager, to stand out from other candidates. What a lot of people aren't doing because you don't have that information yet, but hopefully after today you do, is knowing how to really target a certain kind of company and show that you are directly relevant. So what happens when a recruiter gets like hundreds or 1,000 resumes is they're not going to sift through every one of them. One, they're going to go through referrals first. That's just natural. Wouldn't you, if like you're guaranteed that someone's recommending someone? Second, you'll go through the resumes and be like, okay, who has the amount of experience we want? So basically, and then after that, okay, who's remotely relevant? And it's hard to tell because if you look at some people's resumes, I don't really know like why they even applied to a role, right? Like, so creating, a LinkedIn and a resume that's kind of like half cover little, half experience, you're speaking to the potential company as a person, because who's reading this thing? People. And having more of a target allows them to make decisions faster, and that makes their job easier, and that gets you potentially more interviews. So that gives you the opportunity to actually, connect with the company. So the other thing I want to mention is this kind of approach of really creating your brands and crafting it based on your domain expertise and background allows you to highlight your transferable skills in a relevant way. So this is another gap that comes up a lot. It's like, okay, I'm a teacher. I worked with students for 20 years. Like, how do I possibly transition to engineering? Like, what could possibly be similar? Well, actually, there's a lot of similarities there. It's just knowing the keywords. So when you're starting to build a profile that combines your background, your personality, and your target role, everything is in the frame of reference of the job description and your target role. So it's not about like forgetting what you've done and just being like, I'm a software engineer, hire me. That's kind of not enough because there's a lot of people saying the same thing. So use your network, right? But then your network could help you better if you're branding yourself in a specific way and giving people context right away. So it's all about context and relevance. And if you really don't know where to start, just choose their top 3 jobs that you applied for and read the job descriptions and start crafting like descriptions of your bio that are in a professional sense, like make sense based on what a job description is looking for. So yeah, that's kind of like the high level. I'd love to leave the rest of the call to kind of conversation about how people are doing this and how I can further support you. So let's see, a couple people shared, maybe we can start with them.
It also sounds like you almost have to be a little bit creative and sort of, like you said, read the job description and see what you've done already previously that makes sort of align with that. Like you gave the teacher example. If you're a teacher, you're definitely very good at managing chaos. You're very good at multitasking, and you can use all those skills in your new job and you can talk about them. And I'm sure that everybody has done things and had experiences in their call it prior life before they're trying to enter a tech field, that they can share and they can transfer to the new role.
Yes, exactly. So I'm just going to share a couple articles so that you could have that for reference. One is on the branding, and another, one second, is going to be the transferable skills. And if you want access to any kind of resources that I have in terms of like worksheets for this kind of stuff, find me on LinkedIn and ask me, because I'm more than happy to share that for those that want to use them. So let's see. So Sophia, you graduated over a year ago, and then you got a job a few months after, and you recently got laid off. Okay, you're looking for your next engineering job, is that right?
Yes, yes.
And what are you looking for next in terms of like a company or culture?
I'm a front-end web developer. I'm looking for basically a place that's going to support their engineers towards growth, and I guess invest that time into a junior engineer to build them up into senior engineers, I suppose.
Okay, awesome. So mentoring, team collaboration, things like that. One second. I'm also sending through Carl's profile so that you guys can kind of take a look at that as an example. So I work with Carl, like he's a client. So a lot, what you see is basically the results of ours working together. So, but you can essentially start doing that on your own as well. It's not magic, but it does take some effort to kind of maneuver and massage. But you have a good starting point with this profile essentially. Nice. So Sophia, in terms of your job search, are you targeting companies that, talk about mentorship and team building?
Well, to be honest, I've had some pretty rough rejections, and those really kind of like, I guess, dampen the spirits. And I'm in the position right now where I'm trying to find the love for coding that I had, and just feel that I'm in that position technically where I can contribute as well as I did before. So I'm very much in the self-discovery, do I really want to continue this? Because it's just the job market right now is just so rough. It's really rough.
Yeah, it's much more saturated than before. Hopefully it irons out in the next couple of months, like more people settle into other jobs and not like every position getting like 1,000 applicants. Okay, cool. Well, if you have any specific questions about what we're talking about or other things, you can definitely speak up. So Rebecca, you're transitioning into software development, but with a focus on indoor farming and a background in chemical engineering and plant biology. Walk me through a little of kind of like how you're positioning yourself so far.
Well, that's one of my ideas lately. Indoor farming has had a tough time lately with part of indoor farming has been funded through cannabis. And so that industry has crashed. And then I think there's a lot of hype around indoor and vertical farming. And so there was a lot of investment that also kind of crashed recently. So the thing I'm seeing is that's growing is the need for smarter software. I have zero background in coding, except for when I did bioinformatics work with R. But other than that, I'm not a coder. I don't know the first thing about developing software, but I have the chemical engineering background to know how the equipment and first principles and calculations get put together and I know what good software looks like because I've used it as a process engineer. So I really, I guess I'm attracted to what you had mentioned at the beginning in terms of collaborative groups. I don't even know where do I begin in terms of who do I talk to build out software. So I'm just early in in that stage, honestly.
Yeah, there's a couple of things you could explore. And in terms of career exploration, I help out with that too. So Rebecca, if you want to chat about that, just feel free to DM me on LinkedIn. In general, software engineering is not the one and only role available in all of tech. There's other routes like account management, product management, sales, tech support. There's a lot, obviously design. There's way more options than we ever imagined. So what I would say is to get started, pick 5 companies that you're kind of tracking and look at what roles they have and start just talking with people, like establishing connection calls with them, and use that as kind of a research base to understand like what kind of roles exist that could be a good match for you going forward.
That's great. Thank you. Sounds like a good plan.
Absolutely. And then once you determine that role, then you could brand yourself into that role. But if you don't know that role, it's kind of hard to start. So Chris, you are transitioning into a career as a data analytics and currently customer support director. Oh, cool. Okay. So you've been working in tech and you want to move away from CS and into data analytics. Can you talk a little bit about your journey there? Okay. I'm not sure if she's still here.
I think she just unmuted.
Yeah, it looks, yeah, I just was noticing it
Oh,
said
okay.
share video, so I was hung up on trying to do something with that. Yeah, I am working through a data analytics boot camp career track with Springboard as my means for my focus for accomplishing this. So yeah, I worked as a mainly hardware engineer right out of college, and then worked into system engineering, working with some database management at the end. And then I took quite a long time off for some family caregiving, children, and my husband after he had a bad accident. And then I got back into tech several years ago and do a really techie kind of admin support role and direct customer support for a really small company that's actually really successful, though. We do online training courses. So people purchase the courses online and then take them online. And I work with the authoring tool for the course content too. So I wear a lot of hats in a small company. But I'd like to get back to or get into a career where I can have full benefits at a larger company. And I'm interested in data and data analytics and then maybe moving from there into data science. My ideal job someday, maybe, if I can make all that happen, is to work with, I know OHSU and University of Oregon have a big project where they have using machine learning to analyze historic cancer patient data to try to cure cancers. So that's it's like an ideal job that maybe I could aspire to, project on someday.
Yeah.
But I'm kind of willing to kind of work wherever I can get really good experience in a company that would be a good company with good work-life balance and good benefits and all. Data analytics, just starting out, it kind of like grand level. Yeah.
There may be some skills, like some kind of research practices that you did in the back in your previous experiences that maybe didn't show up as research, but you could reframe and use as transferable skills. And right now in the training product company that you work at, do you use data in any capacity?
Yeah, we do.
Okay.
We've got a lot of data and we do a lot of things with spreadsheets with analyzing data, and we've got a lot of plugins to WordPress for whole learning management system and such too. And there's a lot of data there, customer data and such. Yeah.
Okay, awesome. So everyone here, basically when you're moving from one role into a completely other role, but it still has some overlap, it's really important to kind of bring up and highlight what the new role, kind of how that shows up in your old role. So there's probably a couple of like achievements on the data side that you could bring up and highlight as you're moving into data analytics roles. And what's important is when you write your resume in LinkedIn, you literally focus on those achievements, not like all the other things, because a customer support director, you could talk about like 10 different things. But if you want a data analytics role, it's more useful that you talk about your work from like a data perspective.
Yes,
So
that all makes
think
sense.
about that when you're crafting a new persona there.
Yeah, that all makes sense. Thank you. And I had thought about that and kind of volunteering some projects I can do at work too, using data in some ways that my boss could use in putting together.
Exactly.
I have capstones in the program, in a boot camp I'm doing, and then I could
Mhm.
add some additional projects to build a bigger portfolio. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, that's perfect. If you are currently in a role where you have any opportunity, whether you're asked to or not, to support in a way that's more similar to your new role that you want, you can definitely explore that as well. And that's kind of a way to further brand yourself by really refocusing everything on your profile and resume around the new role, essentially.
Yeah, and I guess
So
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
no, go.
I was just going to say my biggest fear is my age. And so I'm used to on resumes having things being pretty chronological and sharing dates.
Oh, you don't have to do that.
Yeah, I don't want to. I don't want to
Yeah.
highlight how old I am or when I got my college degree and such. So
You don't even have to talk about college.
it doesn't seem relevant. It seems like
not.
the skills that I have and the experience that I have that's relevant to the position.
Yeah.
Focusing on when I did certain things. Yeah. Okay.
So since you guys showed up, I'm actually going to share one other link with you. And this is for like a narrative resume. And why this is interesting is it is like a half cover letter, half resume, and you can build whatever profile you need from it. So consider taking a look at that as like a new way to present your work. And you can replace work experience with projects, for example. But what's important is that you can stand out as like the human being that you are and with your unique qualifications by writing a more narrative approach, using a more narrative approach up top, which also makes it more readable for everyone. And as I said, education doesn't really matter unless you're a completely new grad and have no work experience. Everyone here sounds like has work experience, so rely on the projects and your work experience as a foundation. So I'll do one more person. I'm going to call on you, Lenny. That's okay. So you mentioned you're going back in the hunt for a software engineer role. So you did software engineer support. A technical support engineer. Are you working there right now?
Yep.
Okay. And you're looking to get back into the actual engineering work, right? Like a true software engineer.
Yeah,
role.
it would be my first like full engineering job. So not necessarily getting back into it, but getting into it at the ground level, whatever level I can get to. I've worked in tech for 2 years now. I'm glad to hear that I've been doing some stuff that you just recommended to Chris, which is like reaching out to other teams and offering to help out where I can. For doing the kind of work that I actually want to be doing. And that's been it's been successful, but it hasn't led to anything despite like conversations about switching teams and being a squeaky wheel about like, hey, I'd really love to join this team. Let me know what I can do. Like, can we set up some concrete goals for me to like take steps to join this team? It just is moving really slow, and it's not a great time to be in the job market, but I'm starting to look outside of my company to get this ball rolling.
Yeah.
So
okay.
I decided to, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead. You decided to do what?
Well, I decided to take the support engineer job because I needed a job.
Yeah.
In retrospect, I sort of regret that choice because I think if I had struggled through a few more months of job searching, I probably would have had a probably would have found a junior engineer role. But I needed a job and I took the job, and I actually love the company I work for and I love my teammates. So I landed in a pretty good spot, all things considered. But I really want to be an engineer, and getting into that role has been very challenging for me.
I see. Yeah, so after this talk, basically look at a job description of something you feel like you could take on or really would want to take on, and then create a profile that speaks directly to that as much as possible. And then the next thing is look at your work as a support engineer and talk about like, what can you pull out from there that showcases your actual engineering work, and maybe side projects that you did within the company as well.
Yeah.
And then, you know, start kind of exploring other people's profiles that maybe has both support engineer and software engineer in there. But I bet a lot of it is just like they networked or knew someone or applied and then, you know, got a role from there. But at a minimum, you want to have a strong understanding of, as an engineer, what are you bringing to the team? And now that you have professional work experience, you actually have some better understanding of what engineers might be doing. So maybe use your internal team as like support to figure out, okay, how do I talk about myself as an engineer?
That's a good idea. I haven't told anyone internally that I've started looking elsewhere yet. But I do have a couple people. I participated in a mentorship program at my work, and I could reach out to that person who mentored
and
me.
Also, you don't have to say that you're switching, not that it matters that much. You could just be like, hey, like, you guys know I went at a boot camp, and now I'm like really interested in like exploring software engineering more, because I like get on this is your internal teammate, so it doesn't have to be much setup. It's like, hey, can I just like learn a little more about what you're doing? You could even frame it like, hey, I want to like figure out how to, I don't know, make your life easier or understand more about the team so I could like do my job better, whatever. This will give you more context in terms of what kind of work does software engineering really involve, and like you'll notice some keywords that you could start using on your own too.
Yeah, that's definitely useful. I think the other thing I'm trying to do is figure out how to differentiate myself in the sea of like low experience engineers. I know I have my, work experience in tech, which maybe is differentiating, but it's not in the role that I want.
It does.
So
it's still more than zero direct work experience, right?
Yeah.
So don't discount what you guys have already, like use that as a foundation instead and build on top of it. And then in terms of differentiation, something everyone can consider here is look at your domain knowledge and how can you use that to apply to other competitors, other similar companies, or adjacent domain companies as well. So on your LinkedIn, it says you're at Optimizely. So perhaps that's like an analytics company. Maybe there's other companies that would happily take on like a 1 year experience of engineering because they're looking to grow their team. So really understand how you can play to your domain first, because that's lower risk for a lot of hiring managers as well.
Yeah. Thanks.
Absolutely. Anyone else have any final questions or want to share how their journey is going?
I did have one more question, actually.
Sure.
The About Me section of your LinkedIn page. How much time do recruiters actually spend reading those? If they're not if they don't already have your resume in hand?
Everything you do is literally creating psychological safety. So it's in a professional sense, but it's still the same basic human emotion of safety. And in a professional self, that safety is like, this person understands what I'm looking for, and they perhaps could be a match for this position. And that all happens within seconds.
You're talking about creating safety for the recruiter who's looking at your profile thinking this is a safe person to reach out to. Is that right?
Not like, not like actual safe, but like, are they relevant?
Yeah. Okay.
So you don't have, like, don't spend a ton of time in any one place, because right, the about is not going to be viewed and reviewed and like published. Thank you, Andrea. I appreciate that. You're not writing a book, you're not making money from your bio section. Like, just make sure it hits like basic targets of, I am a XYZ target role, looking for XYZ company, excited to do XYZ based on a job description. Like, you
Okay,
just
cool.
want to hit those basic marks so that you don't come off as off. Like, you don't want to raise any flags, right? Like, you're also looking for red flags from the company, which sometimes they just like give off all the time. Sometimes they don't, but basically they just want to know you're a real person, you're legit, like you're interested in this, and like there's some match between what they're looking for. It's just hitting some basic talking points, basically, because the real interaction is going to happen during interviews. That's where you want to put your energy into. The setting up of the profiles is just like the first step. But what happens is when you set up those profiles, like the about and resume and stuff, if you write it in that way, you can literally use that when you're speaking about yourself. So what you're doing is multiple things at once, and supporting yourself in knowing how to introduce yourself, what kind of companies you're targeting, how you want to talk about what roles you're looking for. You're basically doing a lot of prep that you can use in multiple ways at one time.
Thank you.
Absolutely. And again, if anyone has questions or is looking for any specific resources, you can find me on LinkedIn. But I hope this was helpful. And yeah, good luck, everyone. You're doing great.
And Anna, thank you so much for sharing your expertise and all your advice. Anna's website and LinkedIn are included in the meetup page for this meeting, so you can always go back to find those links. But with your permission, Anna, I can share your LinkedIn and website again in the chat.
Yeah,
I'll send it right now for everyone. And
Can I
everybody, thank you for your time. Yeah, any questions?
Oh, I was just wondering where the recording was going to be posted.
Yeah, so recording will be posted shortly. Hopefully tonight or tomorrow. It's going to be on the Collab Lab website, and I'll send the link right now. And it's also going to be on our YouTube. So either later tonight or tomorrow. I'm sorry.
I appreciate everyone coming to this session today. I really appreciate your time as well. So yeah, keep in touch.
Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you so much.
Bye.
Thanks, Hannah. Bye.